this point, I'd love to get into the case study of Northamptonshire Police and get a proper introduction to Justin. Justin, are you still there?
Yes, I'm here, thanks.
Hello. So, Justin, would you
Hi.
mind introducing yourself to everybody, please?
Yes, my name is Justin Parsons. I've been with Northamptonshire Police for nearly 13 years, and I've pretty much been in IT and networks for the last 10 to 15 years, and plan to be in it for a little while longer yet.
Great.
We also cover kind of a large communication side in telephony as well. We've realised that a lot of the things these days are more integrated between telephony networks, so we kind of work as a unified network and communications team.
Perfect. Would you mind giving us a bit of background about Northamptonshire Police?
Yes, pretty much with all UK police forces at the moment, there's a lot of change going on. We currently employ about 2,500 employees, stretched over many sites. With everything these days, money's becoming an issue and the size of the estates are shrinking. So there's becoming a greater need for agile working from home, remote hot desking, lots of bits and pieces like that. Fortunately, at the end of last year, we were lucky enough to get some innovation money from the government to kind of help us fuel this agile working environment for us, and at that point, that's when we kind of fully implemented, the solution that Meraki had to offer for us. Because of the flexibility of the solution, we've also got some of our regional forces who are also quite interested in getting this up and running. Some of them already have, and also you see there we've also got some interest with the fire service as well. There is also some communications with the courts at the moment, so they're looking at a similar solution, using it off the back of ours. So, all in all, looking pretty nice for us.
Great. So, would you mind just describing your previous network before you had Meraki in place? What did it look like?
We only really had wireless on one site because of the wireless controllers and the cost of those. Implementing it across so many sites can prove very expensive. They weren't the easiest things to configure, and with all complex devices, you start to lose kind of interest in them the more overly admin heavy they become. The monitoring of them, people just kind of use them. There wasn't the flexibility for individual user log on like we would like that we're getting now with the Cisco Meraki solution. And with everything, including those police cars, they come to the end of their life. And you've got to embrace a new technology. Cloud computing and the whole cloud environment has come a long way over the last 10 years. So that's why we decided to kind of look at what Cisco Meraki had to offer.
Great. So then, once you decided, yes, you did need a new wireless network, what kind of requirements did you set out, and what kind of requirements are actually enforced on you in terms that you have to satisfy in terms of compliance as well?
Yeah. Basically, Northamptonshire Police needed to have a reliable solution. With agile working and more people using it day in, day out, it had to stand up to many people being connected at the same time. We needed it to have it, quick to roll out. We found with the old systems, you could spend a lot of time configuring boxes, going backwards and forwards. Literally within 10 minutes of plugging one of these devices in, it was online. I think it actually took us more time to get the ports configured on the switches than actually the units come up and us to be able to access the cloud and attach to the AP itself. We needed to have multiple logons to multiple SSIDs. We have a number of requirements. We have our internal users. We also use BlackBerries a great deal, so we wanted to kind of segregate them off on their own SSID. We have different organisations, like I said, with fire and the courts. We wanted to logically separate them, given their own security parameters around those and what they were allowed to connect to. We rate limit their bandwidth and lots of different kind of things like that. And with the police sector, we are heavily governed by CESG, and anything we do gets quite closely scrutinised. Wireless isn't typically allowed, and basically we had to kind of work a way around that. And because of the way the Cisco Meraki solution works, tunneling information from the inside out to our MX appliances, it enabled us to kind of get over that loop. We then had the whole solution pen tested twice. The first time was our initial setup, and then part of ongoing work, once the whole solution was in, we then got it pen tested again just to double tick the boxes and just to make sure that everybody was happy that what we were doing was going to be okay with the CSG guidelines and compliance. I also know aware of another force in our region who's been through the same penetration testing. They got a better result than we did. I'm not sure how, but I think it's kind of on the day different pen testers test slightly different things. But you know, the overall assessment, it was a low risk of the whole implementation.
Great.
Okay.
And in terms of the Cisco Meraki solution, and how did that tick some of the boxes that you were looking in terms of your requirements?
It just needed, the main thing is for it to be simple to install, and like you said earlier, it is a matter of a case of you plug one in. We do have some other internal complications to get them out to the internet, but that's what we have internally. When we put our first unit in, we plugged it into an internet connection. Instantly, within minutes, it registered with the cloud. So it's, like you say, there's no messing around with on-site wireless controllers. You haven't got any of that to worry about. We do the same thing that you were mentioning earlier. You take your order number and all your access points are available in the cloud. They're ready to manage. As we'll see later, you'll see we've got probably the best part of 300 sat there waiting to be commissioned. That once we kind of bring into the live system, they'll move over and we can configure them up very quickly.
Yeah, an interesting thing that you mentioned about the on-site controller. I mean, in this sort of instance, if you did want to expand your deployment, a lot of the times when you do have a controller on site, you have to be thinking about what's the capacity of that controller in terms of how many APs can it handle. There's none of that you need to worry about here. You can kind of add APs as and when you wish.
Yeah, I mean, with these 300 APs, we haven't had to consider any on-site controllers whatsoever. As long as we can get them to see the internet, then the Meraki cloud just takes over and manages all that. You know, the cloud is the on-site controller for us.
Mm-hmm. So in terms of deployment then, describe how you guys went about deploying these APs across your sites.
Okay, well initially we had, I think it was about 10 units. We wanted to kind of learn and understand them. They were new to us, we hadn't played around with them much. So we had some in, got them online, configured, testing, and it quickly came apparent to us that, you know, this was a solution that we could scale up. After these initial first 10, there became kind of some concern of how we were going to make this work. Because we run a restricted network, we can't have the wireless access points on the network. So to get the information, which we consider to be dirty traffic, we basically back them into an ASA 5505 firewall, VPN that traffic to the outside of the network so that none of the wireless traffic was on the internal network. Mm-hmm. Then we learned about the MX units, the MX100s. We've got 2 of those now, which actually, instead of having the ASA 5505, the Meraki AP becomes the ASA 5505, and it does the tunneling over an encrypted 128-bit tunnel out to the MX unit and dumps the traffic straight on the internet. So we can make further savings by not having to have potentially 35505 to manage on top of everything else. Yeah. So it was kind of a nice solution, and I think it's ticked so many boxes in terms of the administration overhead and made things a lot simpler. They just sit there and run, and we just plug them in.
Great. So phase two then, what did phase two involve for you guys, or is involving?
Right, now we're up to about 40 that we've got installed. You see there, we've still got 300 odd to go. We've got quite a strict rollout plan that's now in place, and between now and September, we'll be rolling those out. A lot of the work is done by our cablers. They're coming in, they're collecting the units from us, and they're going to site them. You know, we've been out and done site surveys to determine where we want to place these. With Wi-Fi, it's a bit of a dark art because you're not really sure how far the signal is going to cover. So, you know, if we've got a place that we're not too sure about, we can just stick it on the table, walk around with a laptop, see what the signal's like, and move it around, you know, while you're there. It's not a permanent fixture. Once we've decided where it goes, you know, stick a mark on the wall, the installers, the cablers come along, cable to that point and fix them to the walls. We will then, from that point, connect them into our network switches. We do use DHCP reservations on them because we need to always identify those IP addresses because of the way we're tunneling them out. So we need to ensure they've got the same IP every time. A bit of back-end firewall work, and that's it. They're just left to get on with it, and they're available. There's a big uptake at the moment because everybody's got BlackBerries, and because they've got the SSID pre-configured on them. As soon as we plug them in, we can see people are hitting them. And within the force itself, there's a big rollout of laptops, tablets, things like that. And we're kind of, as they are being deployed out, we're trying to keep ahead of where those are. We're increasingly finding that you find people have been given them and, oh, I can't get onto the Wi-Fi because they've decided to go somewhere that's not set up for it yet. But I think the rollout will go a lot quicker than you know we anticipate.
Yeah. So how many SSIDs do you guys have configured, and what sort of groups of people are connecting to those?
Okay, I think we're on about 7 or 8 now. We typically have a guest network, so people rock up to our headquarters sites at the moment, and they're third-party workers or guests there for the day, and they want to get connection back to their own organisation. They can get a 1 day, or if they're in for a couple of days, a log on for that. We have our own internal user SSID, which all our laptops and things are configured with. And then basically what happens is when people come into the office or they're around any one of the 40 odd sites, and once everything's deployed, they'll be able to hook on to the Wi-Fi. They'll then set up a VPN tunnel, which will enable them to connect back into the force. It sounds a bit back to front, but because it's wireless, we have to treat everybody as dirty traffic, so we have to send them out of the network to bring them back in. But there's a diagram coming up shortly which better explains kind of how that's achieved. Yeah. We've got one which there's a lot of interoperability going on between Northamptonshire Police and Northamptonshire Fire. As part of our estates reducing in size, we're more moving into fire stations to use some of the office space there. So as part of that, the fire staff want to use Wi-Fi, so kind of a bit of you scratch my back and we'll scratch yours. We're letting them have access to our Wi-Fi. And again, because it's all tunneled straight out, there's no risk to our internal network. The same thing we're doing with the courts. And then kind of one of the biggest benefits is because we work quite closely with our regional forces, and they're kind of got on board with the Meraki solution as well. We have a regional SSID, so somebody can leave Northamptonshire Police, drive all the way up to Nottinghamshire Police, turn up there, and once they're in sight of the SSID, they're on the network, quick VPN, and they're back connected to their own force. Yeah. So it really is kind of giving a regional Wi-Fi solution.
Great. So I think this is the diagram that you were talking about. So do you want to explain at a high level what's going on here?
Probably the best thing to do is just split it in half because they're both the same. One's the HQ side, one's the DR site. Now, basically, you've got your Meraki access point in the middle where your clients connect to, and that plugs directly into our internal network. it's given a DHCP reservation, purely for the fact that we then have to tunnel the traffic out of the firewalls to the internet. We have other connections, which isn't our default gateway. So inherently, traffic doesn't go out this way out of our network. So once somebody's connected to the AP, their traffic is virtually tunneled through our internal network outside, and it creates a VPN tunnel between the AP and the MX100 sat out on the internet. Now, because we're not traversing the internet as is, we get good speeds because we are connected at 100 gig through these connections. Once people are connected onto the Wi-Fi, because they are tunneled to the outside, it means that once they set up their VPN connection to come back into the force, they appear as though they're coming from the outside rather than the inside. So when it comes to SSL certificates and things like that, you don't run into any problems. We've got a mirror of the site on our DR site, and although this hopefully is going to be something Cisco and Meraki look at the moment it's a manual switchover to tunnel the APs from one site to the other. There is an automated way if they're on the same layer 2 subnet, but because we're on 2 different sites and it's layer 3, it can't do the automated failover. But I'm kind of hoping that Meraki look into that for us to come up with a solution.
Great. Well, that was a great explanation of that diagram. It's quite a unique setup actually as well, so it's very interesting. So in terms of the benefits that you've had and the few APs that you've installed already, what sort of things have you noticed to it?
The dashboard, the centralized management, to us is a dream. Everything's in one place. We can manage the whole network, whether it's the access points, whether it's the MX units, all through the same cloud. We can add restrictions to the management of the dashboard. We'll get onto later on, we'll probably see in the dashboard where we can tie it down so we can't sit on the beach in Malibu and configure the network. Like I says there, the visibility, I mean, these points are, this is what it is. It is real-time reporting, status. We can go on and you can see that your APs are online. You can see if they've rebooted. You can see if they've had upgrades. Scalable, it's plug and play to us. Now the core installation is there. The only thing we're left to do is just keep plugging these things in and plug them in, say which SSIDs are allowed to advertise, and walk away. Time saving, I absolutely hated the old solution. It was time consuming, half time didn't work. You're chasing around trying to find out why it's not working. Any issues that we have had, we've booked calls through either the dashboard itself with the support team. They're very good, they come back, they explain things. Because it was so new, you kind of ask some stupid questions to begin with. But they're very good in how they explain, and the whole solution is what we were kind of looking for. I think from the first 10 minutes of the first AP, we were almost sold because it was just 10 minutes we're up and running, and we're like, it can't be that easy. Where's the catch? And we haven't found one yet. So it's been good. Brilliant.
So some of the results that you've experienced from the few APs that you've deployed right now, what kind of, I think penetration testing is a great one, but is there anything else that you've kind of experienced along the way?
I mean, the solution has got in. We had a video call going the other day on a laptop, and we left our office while having a VPN connection back in. We started to have a Cisco Java call, video call, and from that point I left the office and I went walking around most of our headquarters sites. Apart from the stairwell, the video call stayed up, and basically it was hopping from one AP to the next. Because we haven't done a large deployment at our headquarters site, I was kind of expecting it to drop out, more than it actually did. Yeah. But it was nice the way you could just go from one to the other, and it seemed as hot between APs. no reconnecting or anything like that. The penetration testing, we are governed, as I said earlier, about the CESG. We have to be regularly pen tested to make sure that we're adhering to the guidelines. And it's good to have an external third-party company validate that the solution you put in, is secure. It is up to the job, and I guess it's also a testament to Meraki themselves that what they've done is also being accredited to a degree by these pen testers and the class consultants who are the ones looking after the information assurance for the UK police forces. You get the same in other organisations, healthcare, financial institutions. They're all highly governed and have to meet their own criteria to be able to do various things. And that last line there in blue, that was a quote from our pen test, and the overall assessment was it was a low risk to the force, to policing, at a time when there's a lot of focus on security of data through police forces everywhere. It's good to know that the solution has kind of ticked the boxes.
Brilliant. Well, I mean, to wrap up then, are there any future plans that you've got for not just Meraki or just ICT in general for Northamptonshire Police?
We're looking at in-vehicle Wi-Fi at the moment, which, that's the next kind of stage, getting that wireless connectivity in routers in the vehicles, and also, having the ability to use 4G more than is being used now. Officers with these laptops want to be out and about more. They want to be using their devices. The old 3G just wasn't up to the job. And as 4G is kind of being rolled out further and further throughout the county, throughout the country, it's enabling us to kind of do a lot more out and about rather than people sat in stations having to come back all the time. From Meraki side, we've got 300 odd units to get out, so that's kind of what we'll be plugging on with, and then more to do with the regional side of things. Some of the other forces are interested, and they've asked for some assistance to kind of get theirs up and running as well. So it's kind of increasing the region's use of the Meraki Wi-Fi solution, really.
Great. Well, there does seem a lot of collaboration between you guys and other regional police forces. That's really good to see.
Yeah.
So let's actually flip over to my web browser at this point. We talked a lot about the stuff that you guys have got configured and how you have things set up. I think it'd be a nice change of pace to actually see how it is actually set up. Oh, I've been. Let me just sign back in again. So Justin has very kindly agreed for us to be able to share the Northamptonshire Police dashboard. Justin, for your benefit, I am using a read-only login, so I can't mess anything up. But this is kind of the sort of view that you would see as you log into your dashboard, and the first view that you would see for the wireless network. Justin, do you just want to describe some things that you use more often, just what we're looking at here, and perhaps then we can take a look at the inventory view and work our way from there.
Yeah, okay. Well, the first kind of view you get is of your network. The Google Maps hook-in enables you to place your APs actually on the sites and locations where they are. You can flip between the satellite view and the map view. We do have other units elsewhere in the county, but this is kind of our, the main ones we look at. And then at the top, you kind of have an overview of the usage that's going through the unit over the last week. I think probably in your view here, because it's read-only, you probably can't change. You can go and view the last 2 hours, the last day of traffic, to kind of get a drill down of what's happening more recently. And then under kind of network-wide, if we can just go on there, clients. And this is basically all the clients that are attached, obviously the ones online, the status is showing green, and tells us kind of the usage of those individual clients, what type of devices they are, and whether it's Mac, BlackBerry, things like that. The IP addresses that have been given, any policies which are assigned to individuals. Typically, on our BlackBerry SSID, we only allow Blackberries, so that nobody else can kind of try and get the SSID key and sneak their own devices on there. And then at the top, it kind of gives you a view. You can drill down into the applications and see the sites where people are actually going. Majority of ours is secure VPN traffic, but you can see people going to Apple, Facebook, Dropbox, all these things that things like Dropbox and file sharing things. And one of the other pages we can tie it down so people can actually not use those. There's a lot of people who try, and iTunes is a good one, as you can see. We can't stop guest users really doing anything. What you tend to get is, the odd guest user comes in, and because their device inherently is syncing with iTunes and things, you will get some. But we do try and block it as many places as we can.
Each application, by the way, it's reported as a hyperlink. So if you did want to drill down and find out which clients have been using iTunes, for example, you could do so by just clicking into it.
Yeah. So if you went onto Facebook there, you probably
yeah, we can see the clients that have been connecting to, or you've been using Facebook, and they're sorted by operating system, how much data they've been using for Facebook, etc.
Yeah. And Facebook's one of those tools that a lot of the forces actually use these days to keep people up to date with what's happening outside. So it's there for them to use. So if we go on to network wide, see what else we've got in here. Traffic analytics.
Yep.
It's just a kind of another view of being able to see where your main traffic's going. You can quite easily click on some of these sites. Again, you can find out who's doing what. You can even see which access point they've accessed it from.
Yeah.
I don't know if you want to show where the access. So if you click all the way through, so similarly to the Facebook, and then into a user, and then it'll show the.
Yeah. So if we click into iPhone user, for example, and then we can see which AP they're actually connected to here.
Yeah, and also this, we can actually go and edit this. So if we find out whose iPhone it is, we're particularly interested in it, we can put a name on it, and so that it's easier for us. We can see which access point they've come in on. They've used a splash screen logon to authenticate, so we know it's definitely them, unless they've shared their password. Again, over on the right hand side, you've got the applications with the more details, so it drills more down to about what that actual person has been doing.
Yeah, and if you did find, sorry, it's a reminder for another meeting. If you do find that you have a client there that's not authorized, or they're a nuisance client and you want to throw them off, you can do that in an ad hoc basis here. You can block clients off and leave them a little splash-based message if you want to as well.
Yeah, we found the odd person's managed to kind of get the SSID and put it on their personal iPhones. So we typically put a nice message in there saying, please remove the SSID and key and everything. If you think this has been done in error, please book a call with us. And surprisingly enough, nobody's booked a call yet.
And compare that, Justin, to what you had before. Did you have any of this kind of visibility? So if you did have an iPhone connecting personal device, would you have known about it?
No, I don't think on the level of software that we had on ours, I don't think we had any of the granularity to be able to look at the devices, what the device was doing. You certainly couldn't do the clicking through like you can in this dashboard. To kind of drill down into individuals, it's very old and clunky.
Yeah.
Whereas this, you can fly around this from page to page, and it's all there. there's obviously a lot of information behind the scenes. It's not slow. It's quite responsive.
Is it worthwhile taking a look at the inventory list and seeing what? Yeah. So if we go to organization and configure an inventory, so we can sort this. I mean, this is all of Northamptonshire Police's inventory, so we can sort by the ones that have been used. So this is probably 40 odd that Justin was describing earlier. If we go to unused, these are the 300 plus that you guys still can add to various networks.
Yeah.
Do you want to describe how you guys, because there's a few different ways you can do this, but I'm just curious how you guys actually go ahead and configure a new access point.
I mean, we basically, from when we get the order number, we do the claim and we paste in the order number. So we get the order number sent through directly from Meraki, we paste it in there, claim, and all our APs appear into here. And then from this point, we then go and select which AP we want to add. And we go and add it to our wireless network, it's called at the moment, and they drop in. If you jump to the access point page, there are 3 in there which are newly added on the access points. Somewhere down the bottom, there's 3 new ones.
I think new ones get. Oh, here you go.
There you go. So those are new ones which haven't really been set up at the moment. So if you go into one of those access points, so this one's never seen the cloud, but if you do show on the SSIDs, you read only doesn't give you the ability for the tags. If you edit the configuration, at this point here in this tags field, we can set the tags of which SSIDs we want broadcasting out of this AP. Although we have 7 or 8 different SSIDs, we can just stick 34-INET, and because of the way we've made the SSID availability, it will only appear on APs that have got that tag on it. So things like with courts, we only have the court Wi-Fi available on it. The guest access is only primarily at our headquarters site at the moment. The fire SSID will only be available on the access points in fire stations. Because you don't really, I think it's probably limited about 3 or 4 SSIDs out of each AP. I think one of these support guys was telling me it's a good idea not to get too many, or is it?
Yeah, I mean, so you can broadcast up to all 15 if you want to, but yeah, in terms of how many you want to, you probably want to you can do your own testing, and depends on the environment you have it in, but you probably don't want to have it broadcasting 15 at the same time.
No. Which is where this kind of tagging, which SSIDs you want broadcast, kind of helps. Chop up the locations a little bit. Speaking
of SSID, should we take a look at how the SSIDs are configured? Let's just take a look at the overview of all the SSIDs. If you just want to give a high-level overview of who these correspond to in terms of who's connecting to them. Okay, so we've got our EMRM Wi-Fi, which is our regional Wi-Fi, so the one where we can move between forces. We have the next one along, which is for the courts. Iron-Clad is primarily for our internal users. We then have guests for internal. We then have BB, which is for the Blackberries. We then have another one which we won't talk much about, but the 2.8 Iron-Clad is basically for the fire service. Primarily, most of them, I think, apart from the guest has got a splash screen login, so when people connect to that SSID, it prompts them for a login. You can have it so that they're able to self-register, or they basically have to get a login from our reception when they turn up on the day. If you go into 3.4 Iron-Clad BB, you go into edit settings. That's probably pretty much the same as any other. So this is where you get into configuring the SSIDs. So you can have it open so that anybody can just immediately connect to the access point with no authentication, and even with the splash screen you can have no splash screen, so it's open access for all. Or we can tie it down to WPA2 keys, which we have configured on our devices.
We don't tend to use the WPA2 Enterprise because those of you who have ever looked at AO 2.1x probably put the book down and went back to just using standard WPA2. So this one doesn't have a splash screen. One of the others does have a splash screen, and we can probably go there in a minute and we can have a look at what the screen looks like. Because they've used a WPA2 key, they're people we trust. We don't need to let them click through on the splash screen. They don't need to do secondary sign-on or anything like that. So that's splash screen. So we scroll down a bit further to the this is where we basically whitelist and blacklist the. Right, we've been playing around with this. That's why they're all whitelisted. But this is where we would basically you can restrict by device, so you can blacklist Android devices connecting to this SSID because it's the BlackBerry one. The only one we should have active there is the BlackBerry, but we've been playing with it recently. And then as you go down further, because we have to tunnel all our traffic to the outside, we use the VPN tunnel data concentrator, and that's where these MX100 units come in. And basically what it says is any traffic which hits that access point will be tunneled to the outside this MER3 MX1 device. So it all gets tunneled outside. There is the ability for split tunnel traffic there. But we want all the data to go straight out because we don't trust any of it. And then it's kind of personal options down the bottom. We've not really played around with any of those particular settings. So if you want to go back to 349 guest, because you can click on the, you can view, where is it? You can.
Do you want to show the splash page?
Yes, it's on the splash.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. If we go to splash page here, and we can preview it. Here. So this is what people see when they try to log in as guests.
And then there is the option to have a register for access. But what happens then is an email goes to administrator to basically grant the access. It's a personal choice how individuals want to set that up. But very simply, there's various themes there for the splash screen. None of this took more than half an hour to set up. Once you kind of got your bearings of where different bits and pieces are within the dashboard, it's pretty simple.
Yeah. So Justin, we've just almost hit 3 o'clock.
Yes,
do you have a few more minutes to hang on for a Q&A?
Yeah.
Brilliant. Okay. So let me open up the Q&A pane here, and first of all, open up the Q&A session. But we've also got some questions here which we can deal with. There's a question here from Kevin for you, Justin, asking how have you found the firmware updates? How have you configured them, and how have you found them generally?
The updates automatically normally get pulled down because we want to be in a bit more control with it. You can actually schedule a time of day when that actually takes place. And if you want to find that on the dashboard. There was one bug, I'm not going to say that everybody's infallible. There was one bug, but they quickly rectified it. They rolled back the image because the APs continually poll the cloud rather than having information pushed to them. Once it's been changed up on the cloud of what firmware version they should be using, they basically go and draw down the older version, which enables them to it. That's the only problem I think we've ever had with the a firmware version.
I'm not sure if I can see the firmware because I'm on read only.
It's the dashboard changed recently. Yeah, there's basically a section in there which enables you to schedule your time of day when you want the updates to happen. You can go on the beta program for beta software. But it is typically, every couple of months there'll be a new version out.
Yeah, I mean, you can, if you want to get to that level, you can do it manually. So, you can opt out of it and then go in manually and update your firmware whenever you feel the need to do so.
Yeah.
Great question here from Peter, hopefully I pronounced the name correctly, asking if the internet link goes down, can the Meraki devices be managed locally? Yeah, good question, Peter. So it's a bit of a two-part answer. So Meraki devices have really been designed from the ground up to handle and be managed via a web interface, 100% via the cloud. So there isn't a local version of the dashboard as such, but if you do, while you're connected to the LAN, if you go to my.meraki.com, you can get some very basic IP information from that URL while you're connected to the LAN. So yeah, good question. Yeah, question here from James. Are you able to have guinea pig APs to screen automatic firmware updates? So you could do so. I mean, you could create a separate network and push out a firmware update to those APs and see how they performed. Yes, absolutely. Good question here from Dave here for you, Justin. How are you finding the throughput of the APs?
We've not really experienced any problems with them. I think we've been probably overcautious with the number of APs we've actually deployed out.
Mm-hmm.
I'm trying to think of the size of a building. It's hard to quantify the size. But what we tend to do is maybe go probably a little bit over the top, just because when we're going to have a high density of users, rather than having so many on one AP, for them spread out against different channels on maybe two different APs. Also, the benefit of having two APs fairly close is, should every one of those fail, we've ensured that there's another AP within close proximity, which will hopefully pick up the same sort of coverage.
Yeah.
But as at this point in time, we've not really seen any issues with throughput that anybody's kind of mentioned, and our kind of one in the office does have a lot of people connected to it. You know, I think if you looked at the AP6, the access point 6 at FHQ,
let's see here.
You'll probably see.
What is it called? AP6?
34 FHQ AP6 is the one with loads of SSIDs on. FHQ, sorry.
FHQ.
Yeah.
AP6,
number 5, sorry. I was going to say number 5. That one down there.
Is there
one with loads of.
this one?
Yeah. That's one we overlaid with SSIDs on it.
But you can also, by the way, as well, decide how much bandwidth you want to give to each client. So each access point has a firewall built into it. So it's actually something we didn't look at. So firewall and traffic shaping, you can decide there, you know, how much bandwidth a client uses, and this is done by SSID. So for the guest here, you can see each client has been limited to 5 megabits per second. And you can also add layer 7 firewall rules, so to deny peer-to-peer traffic, Spotify, etc. And as well as an SSID bandwidth limit if you want to ensure you're controlling all that to your own specification. Yeah, hope that answered that question, Dave. Question here from Alex, which I think we just answered, asking, is it possible to split resources through a single AP to manage speed for specific users or resources? Yeah, there's a couple of different ways you can do this. One obvious way would be to create different SSID for different type of resource or user, and then you control those. If you did want to actually make this more of a kind of a streamlined one SSID solution, you could integrate with H.1x, for example, or Active Directory, and actually on the Active Directory server side of things, you can then correlate or create groups within Dashboard that correlate to filter IDs on the Active Directory side. And so say, for example, if somebody logged in and their Active Directory group was finance, for example, they would be given the group policy that you configure in Dashboard called finance, which may give them access to certain LAN resources, for example, and if somebody logs in as marketing, for example, they wouldn't have access to those resources. So yeah, that is possible. Question here asking about what happens if internet connection is lost. Good question. So I was describing the out-of-band architecture a little bit earlier on, but just to go one step further from that, because we do run an out-of-band architecture, if we did lose connection to the cloud, your local area network is still functioning, but also it's actually still functioning exactly how you had it configured to do so. So every time you make a configuration setting from the dashboard, this gets filtered down and stored locally on the device. So each of these Meraki devices are built from the ground up to handle the rigors of cloud management. So we have extra memory and CPU on all the hardware so that we can take on board this information, and should any interruption in internet occur, your local area network can still carry on functioning exactly how you had it last configured to do so. Yeah, great question.
So I think one of the important things with that is, because the devices do pull the configuration, when you do make changes, it normally says down the bottom, it can take 1 to 2 minutes for the AP to pull the cloud, to pull down its latest config. So that kind of also tells you that the configuration is local. So if the cloud's not available, it'll just carry on working as is. We haven't actually had any times that the cloud's been unavailable, which is a good thing. I know there's about 4 or 5 data centers around the globe now, and some more added recently.
Yeah, precisely. And also, I mean, if we do have any Central European attendees on the line, we do now have a EU cloud. So if you do, when you are setting up your dashboard, select that you are from the European region, and that's where you're based, all your data will actually remain within Europe. It will not leave Europe. If you did want to read a bit more about that, again, there is some documentation on that on meraki.cisco.com/trust. So we are just about, we've gone a bit over time. So Justin, thank you very much for your extra time, and first of all for your time as well. It's been really interesting finding out about your deployment. So really do appreciate you spending the time to tell us about your deployment. I don't know if you had any final thoughts before we wrap up.
No, I mean, you can. There is one thing which I do like about it, is that the offer of the free trials. A lot of it, we got the MX units on a 3-month trial. Meraki were very flexible. We let us extend that trial. So you can actually get this kit, play with it. If you don't like it, send it back. But I think you'll very quickly find that it ticks many boxes, and make use of those free trials. You don't often get that with many vendors, I think.
Yeah, actually, great point. Actually, I forgot to mention that myself. We do have free trials that we set up here. We're great believers in the proof being in the pudding. So, it's all very well and good for us to be able to show during a webinar the dashboard, how it works, but there is no substitute for first-hand experience. So we're very keen for you to try this out for yourself, hence why we've come up with an evaluation program which is completely free of charge. So you can try any of the devices that we have right across the range, access points, switches, security appliances on your own network, and they take about 15 minutes to set up. We have complimentary technical assistance should you need hand setting any of those up, and it's something we'd highly recommend. If you didn't find it was not for you, you can simply pop them back in the box, and we pay for shipping both ways. So the URL to register for those free trials, which you'd recommend, is meraki.cisco.com/eval. Yeah, good point, Justin.
Right.
Other than that, for myself and Justin, thank you very much for attending. Hope you found the session useful, and we do hope to speak to you sometime soon in the future. Thanks very much, Nell. Bye-bye.